It's time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
Welcome on into another edition of Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle. I'm, of course, Trey Lyle. Our guest this week is lead reporter and anchor for PRN, the Performance Racing Network, Mark Garrow, who announced his retirement and ahead of his final broadcast at Las Vegas this Sunday. We sat down, had a great conversation with him about his career, basically how he's done everything in the sport, and much more about that. Mark Garrow now steps into the Inferno.
Now it's time for
I'm Mark Garrow, and this is PRN's Garage Pass.
To Go Into the Inferno with Trey.
Joining me now is a man from the Performance Racing Network. Into the Inferno comes Mark Garrow, friend of Happy Hour. He's been on Happy Hour before. We appreciate the time, Mark. First, want to say congrats on the retirement and appreciate it. So ultimately, you make the call a few weeks ago. Now you're retiring. What led you to that decision? Just you're ready to be done, or just kind of timing lined up perfectly?
Well, sometimes that little bird will just chirp in your ear. It's time. 43 years. I was on the air when Richard Petty won his 200th race. So I'm one of two guys still left in the building that were on that broadcast. Mike Joy, the other, myself. And so, that's 1984. So to have a career this long, I'm certainly appreciative of starting with MRN and then all the years with PRN and the hundreds and hundreds of races that I've done. I think what it came down to, I really enjoy the races. I always have. I'm 67 years old. I went to my first race when I was 1 year old, as I've told the story. My dad was a flagman. My mom was a scorer. And so I was just put in the back of a truck in the pit area. And that's literally how I grew up in this sport. And I just thought right now I love the races, but the travel is just too much at this particular point. The long rides to San Francisco, the long flights to Las Vegas, like this coming week, those are the things that just finally wear you down. And fact of the matter is, as well, forgetting my broadcast career, but I've been working full time since I was 15. So that's 52 years of pounding the rock and trying to take care of my family, trying to take care of those around me, my friends and things like that. So I think I've earned a little bit of a break. However, as I tell everybody, I'm just going back to the short tracks. I'm still going to watch race cars because that's what I love to do.
Yeah, you mentioned that story. You've been a part of this sport like your whole life, essentially. You were 1 year old, and your dad was a flagman. Your mom was a scorer,
Yeah.
and ultimately, how just did that instill kind of racing into your blood your entire life? Like from the set, you were kind of destined to have some sort of role, whether it was in racing, because you've done a lot in the sport, not even in the broadcast booth. You've done
Oh yeah,
stuff,
I've done a lot of different
pretty
things.
much everything, it feels like.
Yeah, I've been a short track promoter. I went back to the track that my dad and mom worked at and ran it for 2 years. PR director at Dover Downs. I had a lot to do with bringing jski.com to the business level that it deserved, given all the people that Jayski was bringing to his website. Had a lot to do with that, the partnership with ESPN, an eventual sale to ESPN. I went to Jeff Hensley in fall of 1988 and said that if you'll put Chuck Bowen in this race car, I'll find you a sponsor. Found Nescafe. And in 1990, we wound up winning the Busch Series Championship. I also helped back in those days the careers of Jeff Burton, Rick Mast, Ward Burton, Tommy Houston. So there were a lot of different guys that I helped out back then. And that was while all the broadcasting stuff was going on at the same time.
Growing up, did you always want to become a broadcaster? Were I remember as a kid, like broadcasting the races myself and, while watching along or, you're playing a video game and, you start
saying trouble in turn two, stuff like that. Did you
No,
always want to do this, or did you just kind of
no.
fall? How did you end up kind of down this path?
It was almost a total accident. So Claremont Speedway in Claremont, New Hampshire hires my dad to be the flagman because he was a professional prize fighter. And they were tired of the flagman getting beat up. The owner was tired of getting pushed around and shoved around after the races when somebody disagreed with a ruling or whatever the case may be. And my dad came in there to be the sheriff, and he loved that because that's what he did for a living, smack guys in the head and put them on the ground. So he got so he liked racing. So I grew up around it, right? That's what I did every Saturday night during the summer. I didn't know anything else. But as I got to be in my mid-teens, 15, 16, I decided to try boxing and trying to follow my dad in those footsteps. He trained me. And for the next 7 years, I won 7 championships, was the New England Golden Glove champion, fought in the Nationals in 1975 in Knoxville, Tennessee with Ray Leonard before he was Sugar Ray, and Leon Spinks and Michael Spinks and all these guys that went on to Olympic glory and gold medals, and then eventually become world professional champions. So I was off on that career path, and I'd go to an odd race or two, but I was kind of away from the racing at that point. And I was interviewed one night by a local radio station, and the gentleman said, "Boy, you don't sound like a typical boxer." And I go, "Well, they nicknamed me TJ, short for Thunder Jaw, when I was like 5 years old because I talked all the time." And I said, "So I can talk. I don't know what else to say." And he said, "You talk so well, why don't you come over to the radio station and try it?" So I did. And a few days later, he said, "Why don't you come over and try it part-time?" So sure, I'll do it part-time. And then by chance at that particular point, the sports director left to go to a bigger market. They asked me to jump in and do sports. A couple of months later, the local racetrack decided that their announcer got sick and they needed somebody else. And they walked in the door and they said, "Hey, is there anybody here that might be able to help us out?" And I raised my hand. I said, "Look, number one, I know quite a bit about racing, been around it a long time. Number two, I could use the extra money." And so they brought me over to Fairhaven, Vermont, Devil's Bowl Speedway, half-mile dirt track in the middle of a cow field. And I started. And somebody gave me a racing paper called Speedway Scene. I looked in, and they had this little article on page 3, Motor Racing Network looking for announcers. And I go, "What in the world is Motor Racing Network?" And the guy goes, "They broadcast NASCAR races on the radio." I go, "Get out. There's no way. I've never heard of that before." And so I set an audition tape there. And the long and the short of it is, the next year, I went over to Claremont Speedway to be the promoter, as I was still the announcer at Devil's Bowl. And halfway through the season there, they had an issue where, again, a elderly gentleman, done it for a long time at Stafford, got ill during the year and had to step down. And so MRN sent my tape to Stafford. They let me audition, and I won the audition. And from that point on, Stafford Motor Speedway is such a great training ground. Mike Joy came through there. Jack Arute came through there. Alan Bestwick came through there. A lot of different things, but they broadcast the race on their PA like MRN and PRN do a race. 2 guys in the booth. They got a turn announcer. They have a pit reporter. They were way ahead of their time. This is in the 80s. They were way ahead of their time. They broadcasted on an AM transmitter so people could put on head hugger radios and listen to it in the stands. They were way ahead of their time. And so it was a training ground there. So Mike Joy went from there down to Daytona. John McMullen stepped into his place at Stafford. Then Mike brought him to Daytona. And then they asked me to come to Daytona. So in that little interim period, I got a chance to interview for the job at Dover, and they gave me the PR director's job at Dover. And for one summer, I drove up and down the highway from Claremont, New Hampshire to Dover, Delaware, 2 and 3 times a week, trying to run a short track, try to be the PR director at Dover. That was a pretty busy year. And then at the end of that year, went on to Daytona in 1982.
I mean, you like you mentioned, you pretty much have done it all. You talked about the start and you worked alongside. I know, and you brought the boxing thing, which I was going to mention because when you were on Happy Hour, you gave some great stories about Humpy Wheeler. You know, who we did lose recently, and how the boxing he would have up in his, I believe, his office, right, at Charlotte.
Yeah, it was just kind of a room off to the side. Yeah.
At Charlotte Motor Speedway. So when was the moment that you really like felt like, I don't want to say made it, but like really like we're like, oh, I am here, like I'm in like I'm in the big leagues now, like you know, everyone says like the welcome to NFL moment, you know, they ask
Right.
players that, but when did you have that as like a NASCAR broadcaster?
Well, when I first went to Daytona and started doing broadcasts for MRN, it was kind of like a little spot deal. I got a chance to do the Busch Clash. I got to do the Thursday qualifiers. And then I believe it was the third year I was there, or the year that I was coming there full time, that they gave me my shot in the Daytona 500. And when you're in a tower in turn 3, and all these legends are lined up 2 by 2 by 2, Petty, Yarborough, Pearson, Waltrip, I mean, you name it. You go, what in the world? And I remember being in that tower thinking, how in the world did I get here? And it was a trip from the time I took over, you know, when and did my first little radio gig at WHWB in Rutland, Vermont, a daytime AM station. It was only 3.5 years. And I tell people all the time, you know, they talk about you got to be good and lucky. And I disagree. You got to be lucky. And then you got to be good enough to hang around. You got to be lucky, and you got to hope that guys like Barney Hall are going to help you get better and make it where you're good enough to be able to stick around. So I was able to have all those opportunities. Again, originally John McMullen, Mike Joy gave me those opportunities. Then, of course, all these years, you know, Doug Rice giving me the opportunity to broadcast with him at Performance Racing Network is, you know, I can't say enough about that. I can't say enough about, you know, what Doug has meant to my career and all that kind of good stuff. So, but yeah, turn 3 at Daytona, lights are off the pace car, and they're coming by me the last time slow, and I'm going like, what in the world? You know, how did I get here? This little redneck from Vermont, how in the world did I get here?
Yeah, I was going to ask you specifically about Doug Rice, who I would assume, based off my math, and granted, I'm not great at math sometimes, that Doug is probably the person you broadcast with the most in your career.
Oh, no question, because our careers together kind of it actually started way before PRN. I was at Capital Sports. I built a network called Winston Cup Today for them from the ground up when I kind of left NASCAR and kind of got blackballed a little bit and couldn't find a deal. So I thought, okay, time to find somebody that will be willing to bankroll, you know, my own network. And Capital Sports, a guy named Al Mangum, George Habel, they stepped in, took the risk. And as we got that going good, we got that to over 400 stations across the country and had great sponsorship, and we're sold out and doing well. Well, what else can we do? Well, nobody was doing Busch Series races like Rougemont, South Boston, Pulaski, Myrtle Beach. They just didn't think they were important enough. Oxford Plains. Even the first race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Didn't think it was important enough to do. So I thought, hey, this could be a little niche for us. And so I had a little broadcast crew that I'm putting together. And I went to Barney Hall and I said, Barney, I need somebody to be in the booth with me. I don't want to do this by myself. I think it would be better to have a co-anchor. And, you know, what would you suggest? Who would you suggest? He said, well, there's this guy down in Salisbury named Doug Rice. I think he'd do you a good job. He's certainly enthusiastic. So I called up Doug. So long before we got on PRN, we were beating around the country doing Lanier and, Pulaski, South Boston, Rougemont, Oxford Plains, Barberville, all kinds of different places. We went to those places that nobody else wanted to go to. And it actually kind of highlighted not only to PRN and MRN, they should be doing these races. It also highlighted, I went to TNN TV and said, guys, you're missing the boat. This is great racing. All you need is 2 cameras on high, maybe an ISO camera and 1 garage camera. You don't need, like a monster amount of equipment to do it. And lo and behold, TNN started broadcasting those races. All of a sudden, when we went to do Richmond one year, all of a sudden MRN went like, whoa, wait a minute. We better start doing these Busch Series races. So we kind of pushed everybody to do that. And then, of course, as they came off the bull rings, we no longer had an opportunity to broadcast. But by that time, Doug had moved over to PRN to run it and asked me to come over with him. So it's been a long relationship, and it's been a great relationship. And Doug is certainly a great guy.
Yeah, and talking to him last year about this, sort of run and how reflective he was, I do want to ask you about that, but I do want to ask you about, like, when you built that kind of relationship in the broadcast booth with just one person, like, for so long, obviously this year had to be different. And I think Brad Gilly does a great job, and all you guys at PRN do a great job, but it was different this year. Was it weird the first time not having Doug with you calling
No, it's
racing?
been weird the whole season, and that's no slam against Brad or anybody else. It's just been, you don't do something for 30 years with somebody and just go like, okay, click, and you're off to the next direction. That's why I kind of wish that as I look back on it, I just kind of went out with Doug, and I didn't need, and as everybody has seen, I didn't need any kind of a big play or any kind of a big retirement tour or anything like that. That's not how, my dad raised me, and that's not what he would have been happy about. He believes in the Italian goodbye. I'm Italian. So you believe in the Italian goodbye, you just push yourself out from the table, you push the chair back in, you shut the light off, and you very gently close the door. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. But I'm very thankful to Jerry Horn and Doug and Barry Roach, Brad, Alexis Erickson, everybody that had something to do with the thing that they did for me this past weekend at Charlotte. My family was able to come. They treated them like royalty. So I'm very, very grateful for what they did there. And I'm certainly appreciative of that as well.
Now we're heading to your last call at Vegas. You do go to a lot of the other weeks. I'll see you at Martinsville, for example. But the last one in the booth this week at Vegas. And I asked Doug this same question last year. Is there going to be a moment where you, like, before you start, that you kind of soak it all in, where you reflect on, essentially your life's work kind of coming full circle in this last moment?
That one's a hard one to answer till you get there. I am one of these guys that I've been very good throughout my life, putting things in the rearview mirror and then moving on to the next thing and not lingering. However, I've been doing this for 43 years. So for me to sit there and go like, I'm not going to think a thing. I'm going to do the race and just take off. I don't think that's going to happen either. So I'm going to have that moment, whether it's at the start or when they finally, I hear the, final downbeat of the outro music of the broadcast. Not sure where I'm going to feel that, whether at the beginning or the end. But I'm certainly, I believe at the end, just take a deep breath and say, hey, man, you ran a great race, man. You were in a marathon. You finished it. I mean, nobody in the history of NASCAR, not even close, has done as many radio shows as I've done. And, 6-time broadcaster of the year, all this different stuff that, that I've done. So I can sit there and go like, and then you look at all the other little things in my resume that I just talked about. Nobody has had that kind of career in this business. And so I'm very proud of that. It makes me wonder how in the world there was enough time in the day sometimes to do all that stuff. But I'm very appreciative. As I said the other day, I'm thankful for NASCAR. Had a chance to work for NASCAR. Had a chance to be on private plane flights with Bill France Jr. and be in meetings with him and understand, how passionate, a guy like he was for this sport and why he took no nonsense, man, no nonsense guy right there. And that's one of the reasons NASCAR was able to survive and then thrive throughout all these years and more to come. So, they tell you to leave it better than when you started. I feel like I did. I feel like I've impacted a lot of different people's lives along the way and helped improve their lives as well. And I'm proud of that too.
Well, you, as you mentioned, a 6-time National Motorsports Press Association Broadcaster of the Year. You were the first recipient of the Barney Hall Award. And I will mention, in 2012, you were inducted into the Castleton Spartans Hall of Fame. So I assume, I'm going to go out on a limb and say more Hall of Fames in your future, my friend. I appreciate you spending some time this afternoon when we recorded this, and congratulations on a retirement, and best of luck with your final broadcast this Sunday out in Vegas for a pretty big race in the NASCAR postseason. Thank you so much.
Trey. Thank you, Trey. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much to Mark for setting some time aside for us today, for us during the interview. Great conversation with him. Good luck again to him this week as he gives his final broadcast of his legendary career. Now, let's get to the latest news and notes with What's Still Hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Joining me as he does typically each week is Caleb Barnes at Caleb Barnes _ host of Stock Car Scoop, helps me produce, bring the heat each week. Caleb, glad you're with me. Now let's get into the latest news and notes. NASCAR meeting with the teams about race manipulation, obviously after last season with the Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace got caught up in it. The Chevrolet team got caught up in it, and was the William Byron situation. And also there was reports about, not Bubba Wallace, his spotter, Freddie Kraft. BBC mentioned how NASCAR mentioned no mention of points, live points during the race because of the fear of race manipulation. Well, after late race communications became a hot topic at the Roval, NASCAR will meet with teams before the round of 8 to stress that manipulation will not be tolerated. So, what do you think about this? And right move, just kind of basically have no gray area whatsoever, it feels like?
I think it's the right move, but I don't think you're going to ever fully eliminate the gray area because you talk about the end of that race, and a lot of people have a lot of different motives, right? You had Cole Custer, the Ford teammates that didn't want to pass the Ford of Joey Logano, and that's kind of obvious reasons, the Ford on the Ford. And that's where you kind of get into some of the race manipulation stuff of non-playoff cars doing things to help cars that are still in the playoffs. But then you had the situation of Denny Hamlin, who you kind of saw, I think Noah Lewis tweeted that he said he wouldn't have passed Chastain if he knew the position that they were in. And you could look at that and make a case for that being race manipulation as well, even though that's a difference of like a guy being in the playoffs and knowing who he has to race. And he'd rather race Chastain than Logano. And he knows what's on the line. He knows how crazy Chastain is. And there's a bunch of reasons that he would rather not pass Chastain. So it is a bit of a there's still so much gray area to go with it, because do you penalize a guy who is in the playoffs who might be protecting a position, or a teammate? Like we've still got multiple teammates, and it's Penske, Hendrick, and Gibbs. Like, do any of these guys who are currently in the playoffs, if Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson goes out and wins Las Vegas this week, do they take action at Martinsville to help the 24 get in? Like it's such a gray area of like, what does that constitute and who do you penalize? Does it only apply to non-playoff guys? And even then, I think you can still make a case for some of the non-playoff guys that like they're trying to stay out of it. They don't want to be a part of the storyline. They don't want to mess up a playoff driver's day, whether that means that they race them easier throughout the first part of a race, or whether that means at the end if they don't want to risk trying to pass a guy because, again, you never know if someone's having a very angry time at Martinsville, they could just get fed up with someone and decide to dump them and ruin their day. And so there's so many different cases that could be made. And I just think no matter how hard NASCAR wants to stress that, hey, we're not going to tolerate any race manipulation, it's a part of racing. And I think it is a little bit maybe made worse, highlighted even more by the playoffs. But at the same time, I think no matter what sort of championship thing format that we're going to have, if there are two guys who are close in the points, I think you're going to see some sort of gamesmanship being played to manipulate the race in one form or another that's going to have an impact on the outcome. So I think NASCAR can stress all that they want and they can give some specifics of what they're looking for. I don't think that's going to stop teams from trying to come up with codes or going over game plans before the race or things like that. And then it's just going to continue to be up to NASCAR to say, well, how much are we going to interpret these codes that these teams are coming up with? Like, were they just talking about a pit cycle, or were they talking about actually giving up a position here or there? So there's so many gray areas with this. And I mean, props to NASCAR for trying to have the conversation. I just don't know that they're going to be able to catch everything.
Yeah, I think I think you kind of nailed it on the head there, with the fact that it's just unless it's blatant, which I would argue the stuff last year that got people suspended, uh, some of the stuff wasn't even as blatant as it could have been. So,
Yeah,
it
like
just
them just saying like where the other cars at in terms of points. Like as a
eh,
driver, you want to know that. Like that's good information to pass along to your driver. What was blatant was like them stacking up rows by row last year. Like that was pretty.
yeah.
Whenever they're
Like,
parading behind the
the
24, that was pretty
Chevy
blatant.
again, we've the Chevy stuff, I think, was a little more blatant than the Toyota stuff,
Yeah,
where I think it was Boaz legitimately had a
that's right. Yeah.
but they said he manipulated it because he didn't go to who knows? But anyway, something else, speaking of 2311, something else you do for the site is you update the, legal cases each week, you and Sam and Stubbs. NASCAR has asked the court to order a settlement conference with a judicial officer, which is different than the person that is the mediator, which is Jeffrey Michigan, former NBA legal officer, who 2311 and FRM wanted to keep. I'll just phrase it like this because it's more legal stuff. They've granted this judicial conference where Kenneth Bell will oversee it. The court will hold a settlement conference together with the parties and the designated mediator beginning at 9:30 a.m. on October 21st, 2025. The court's hearings on the parties pending motions for summary judgment and exclude witnesses if necessary is rescheduled for 9:30 a.m. on October 3rd. Do you think this is going to be settled at the end of the day? Are you starting to feel that way, or you think it's still going to court?
I mean, I think it's still going to court. I think the teams still want to take it to court, just because of how it's all played out so far. But at the same time, it's kind of this is my non-legal expert opinion, just based on what I've seen so far and what I've understood and what I've all Googled to understand all these legal definitions. Is it seems to me like NASCAR at this point is the one who's kind of instigating this, especially after the last couple weeks. We've seen some of the things come out with the emails and the gold codes that were released, and I think again, I know NASCAR's had success with some of these injunctions that have been coming the team's way that they've been trying to get to be able to race as chartered teams, and it seems like NASCAR's been winning the battles. But I think overall, just based on some of this evidence and stuff, that the teams have a better case for winning the war when it comes to proving that NASCAR is monopolistic. And that's what those gold codes documents, that was really the biggest one in showing that NASCAR was looking at just completely taking over all the cars and doing it all by themselves. And showing that they were ready to go vertical is what one of the files or one of the documents said, which literally is vertical integration. It's monopolistic. And so I think with that, I think the teams have had some pretty good ammo, more or less, to go forward with the trial. And that's why the teams kind of pushed back. In one of the documents I was looking back is that they weren't very thrilled about starting over with a judicial officer, is what they said. They maintained that the court should order the parties to engage in another session with the previously selected mediator. That's what they had put in their filing on October 6th, which I believe was Monday. So seems like NASCAR is that they're still trying to get their way a little bit, but they're maybe I don't want to say that they're hitting the panic button yet, but this really seems like the first time. Like previously, neither side looked like they were willing to settle. They were both stuck firmly planted in the ground. And now, from what I've seen, it seems like NASCAR is the side that's saying, "Hey, let's see if we can make something out of this." So I don't know if they'll be able to actually mediate anything. We are getting closer and closer to that trial. We're less than, I guess, 2 months away now from when the trial is supposed to start. So I don't know if we'll get anything worked out. I'm not a fortune teller, but it's something different, that's for sure.
And we'll see. Well, someone who had to say a lot of things was Ross Chastain after his last lap move. He becomes our focus of the soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Yeah, they were innocent bystanders in it, and whether you or not, I don't know, but yeah, I would hate to be in that position. Obviously, yeah, the past speaks for itself, and I'm more aware. I'm aware of my surroundings. I am sorry to them. I'm sorry to Denny. I'm sorry to JGR and his whole team. They were definitely innocent bystanders.
Knowing that Joey had the tiebreaker, and knowing that this race is ending, and watching it go from 3 up, 3 down to 1 to 0 for the both of you, take us through your thoughts at the time and what you were thinking through all of that.
The whole body of work was not good enough today, but then we got to the last lap with a shot, and I just needed to keep those cars behind me and missed turn 7. Just another unacceptable course. Like 11 wasn't even close to it, and I downshifted unnecessarily in the first to make sure I turned the corner, and I slid the rears and let him drive right behind me. So, it's three big errors that took us out. We were fast enough to
Hindsight being 2020, I mean, would you have wanted to cover the 22 coming down pit road?
Oh, I had no idea what was happening there. I mean, they said he pitted, but no, that's up to Chevy, GM, and Phil Surgeon and all Trackhouse. So, nope, don't have a clue. I would have liked to not run off the end of pit road and not speed. I've got 3 big ones to spin in my head for a long time to come, and as I try to get back to work tomorrow.
There you have it, Ross Chastain post-race. Do you think ultimately, once again we'll talk, do you think ultimately it was the right move to leave Ross Chastain out there on those old tires?
I do. I honestly thought it was the wrong move to bring Joey Logano in beforehand. And I mean, I guess hindsight is 2020. It did all work out, but without those last lap, I guess Denny Hamlin making that move there at the end and a little bit other help. I mean, Ross looked like he was in a really good spot, and if he hadn't have missed turn 7 there in those last couple of laps, getting back onto the oval, I think he very well could have done it. Now, ultimately, Ross mentioned it. The mistakes really came early with his pit road issues where he drove straight instead of making that turn and then speeding in the third stage. That's what really did him in because they were up ahead. They had everything in control, and that put them behind. But I think at that point, playing just a reactionary to the 22, Ross was in an interesting spot because he was kind of gaining and closing a little bit, but at the same time, cars on equal tires, we see anytime we go to road courses that cars on equal tires are really hard to pass and get around. And I think if you follow the leader there with the 22, you're still going to be on equal equipment, and it's going to be just as hard to try to get around him, especially Joey, as someone who's notoriously hard to pass and with that playoff spot on the line. And Ross would have had to pass Joey and 2 other cars instead of putting him on the defensive there and trying to hope that the laps ran out. And so I thought that was the best call for them. Like I said, I was shocked that the 22 made the decision to give up the points. And but then again, these drivers a lot of times talk about they'd rather be on the offense instead of the defense. And that's probably a little bit of what Ross was feeling there when he was trying to defend going into turn 7 and missed it and allowed Denny Hamlin to get by there on the final lap.
Yeah, I mean, you don't blame Ross for that last lap move, and I maybe hindsight's 2020. You get him the better tires, and he actually has speed compared to the 22 and gets through the field. Maybe if he doesn't speed, ultimately that's probably what cost him. But definitely Ross living with a lot of regret. Well, my checkered flag is gonna be about the guy who did get through. But we'll talk about that next with the checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Anything you want to rant, rave, or review about Mr. Caleb Barnes? The floor is yours.
I don't know if it will be maybe like a slight little rant. I'm just so tired of, after every single race, the immediate complaints about the playoff format instead of enjoying what we saw, whether it's the greatness of SVG or the battles there coming down to the end, or it just seems like every time something cool happens, there's a million people listing a million reasons on why modern NASCAR ruined that amazing thing. And I just wish people would stop letting their hatred for one segment of the points or the car or whatever it is. Like I highly dislike this car, but like I enjoyed watching down the stretch, watching that battle to see if Ross Chastain was going to stay above the cut line, if he was going to be able to hold off Joey Logano, if Joey was going to be able to get by cars to get enough points back. Like I found all that entertaining. Call me crazy. I thought that was probably the most entertaining part of that race. And I think you could make a case that without the playoff cut line battle, that maybe that race wasn't as entertaining. But I also hear you out and understand that some people are frustrated that they were hyper-focused on that battle. And there are plenty of other cars and storylines that get overshadowed because of the playoffs. So I can hear both sides of the argument going back and forth. I just wish people would look at that and be like, okay, that was a pretty cool moment. Add that to another list of Ross Chastain lore, of the Ross Chastain files, and all the highlight tapes that we're going to see of Ross Chastain in 15 to 20 years, and that we could appreciate it for what it is instead of getting finished and being like, that was horrible. That was the worst thing that I ever saw. Because again, without a cut line, a spot being on the line, I don't think Ross Chastain makes a dive bomb move like that for 16th place.
So I'm gonna say something, and it was partially discussed on Happy Hour. Now that Joey Logano is in the round of 8, and the way he got in is very similar to last year, where he was out late in the race in the Roval, and just like so Ross let him back in. You know, last year they let him back in because the Alex Bowman DQ. I know it's not an odd year, but it feels like Joey Logano is going to win this championship, and it would kind of be fitting for the last time to win this in this format. Joey Logano wins it. I think the only person, and I barely think it benefits him, that benefits from winning this championship is Joey Logano, just because he can say he's a 4-time champion. Because like you could argue Penske a little bit, but Penske could be like, you could argue, like, not even the best Penske car won. That was the 12, and it would be unique. And I'm trying to find. I thought of a comparison to this. I think Joey Logano becomes the Robert Ory of NASCAR, where Robert Ory's won 6 titles, and he was known for very clutch moments. He was Big Shot Bob, but he's not in the, like, he's nowhere close. Robert Ory's sort of going to be a Hall of Famer. I think he is a Hall of Famer at this point. Obviously, Logano, I think, will be a Hall of Famer. But, like, you know, no one ever is going to say the greatest player of all time is Robert Ory. Like, he's nowhere close to the debate. And I think Joey, despite being, 3rd all-time in championships, if he wins his 4th, tied with Gordon, would be in the greatest driver of all time, let alone the greatest driver of his generation, where I think that would go to a Kyle Busch, a Denny Hamlin, a Kevin Harvick, depending on what you want to call his generation. So just unique. We are staring down the barrel. Now I think it's going to be the 12, which I'll ask you in a second your championship 4 predictions. I think it will be the 12 ultimately. But man, oh man, I think it feels like to me if the 22 is at Phoenix, I'm picking the 22 to win the championship. And it's going to be a wet blanket of a championship to possibly, looks like, end this format. All right, Caleb, before we get on here, who's your championship for with the drivers that are left?
I think Hendrick's going to miss the championship 4 altogether. That might be a hot take. I don't know. Although I think I got
So
half
you
of the
the
ones wrong. I think
11, 12, 20, and 20. Oh, well, I guess technically you don't have to have Joey as well. So
Yeah, no, I think it'll be the 300 cars, and I do think Joey's going to miss the championship 4. That's who I've got going forward. Denny Hamlin's on this weird on-off schedule where he's great one week and then he's not so great the next week. And so he was great at Kansas, he's not going to be, or he wasn't so great at the Roval. But I think he's going to be great at Las Vegas and great at Martinsville, which are 2 tracks that he's very known for. But I don't know that's going to be enough to carry him through to the championship. And then Ryan Blaney's been almost automatic at Martinsville the last 2 years, and I see that going the same way. I think Chase Briscoe is going to sneak his way through, and then I think Christopher Bell is motivated after last year, and I think Bell will be the one picking up the championship. I know he hasn't been very, very loud throughout, I guess, ever since he won those 3 straight races. He did pick up the win just a few weeks ago at Bristol, but I think Bell will get the championship. And yeah, that's my championship for 3 Gibbs cars and Team Penske.
actually have the same one. 11, 20, 19, and 12. I think the 20 wins this weekend in Vegas just because that's the exact spot where he essentially, I know Martinsville, because of the last lap move or last lap moment, that's where he got kicked out because of the point situation. But he was going to win Vegas and then just ran out of time because Joey's strategy at Vegas. So I think he's going to win this. I think he's going to be extra motivated to win this weekend. I think the 22 goes all in at Talladega, and they just, because of, it's just hard to pick that race. The 12 wins, and then I think Briscoe does a little bit better than Byron and Larson, and maybe he has to win this, whether it's Vegas or Martinsville, to get it done. So same championship 4. All right, that will do it for us. Caleb, anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
Not this week.
Awesome. You have Stock Car Scoop.
Maybe. We'll see. It's a late race this weekend, so.
Oh, well, he may or may not. You have to tune in to find out for that.
Yeah, surprise.
For Caleb Barnes and Trey Lyle, signing off for now. Join us. I'll be at the watch party. I don't know who will be there. Mike Neff might be there, might not. I don't know who will be there. We'll find out. Find that out on Saturday or Sunday, I should say. Adios for now. Bye, everybody.